and welcome each and every one of you to another
Your
monthly live.
your camera is off.
Okay, let's start
Now I can
again.
see you. Yay!
And welcome each and every one of you to another live Living in the Flow. And today's title is Passion. And what an appropriate title, isn't it, Tanya?
It is because here the month of May is very related to the mother and the passion of Christ and all of that kind of thing. I live 30 kilometers from Fatima, which is a place of pilgrimage where people go and worship Mother Lady Fatima, which in other words would be Mother Mary. And so the passion here that we're going to share about today is a little bit different than the passion that we used to envision before. So it's a kind of passion that is much more natural and non how can I say it, the word I want to, it's not exciting per se. It's not full of excitement, but it is inspiring as a whole. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this Living in the Flow, where Alexis and I play together, and with you as well, with where we all play together. Every month sharing a different theme. And I'd like to remember, before we both forget, that we are hosting a workshop. I don't like to call it a workshop, it's an experience called Ultimate Freedom that will be happening here in Tomar, Portugal from the 18th of June to the 22nd. And Alexis is one of our wonderful, wise participants as a bearer of truth from within, a bearer of freedom, who will be sharing her wisdom with us during these 5 days. She will not be here in presence, but we'll be sharing online, so the people will be here. This is not an online event, okay? But we will also be having Serena Faith Masterson online. And here I and Joanna, my co-partner in the InPassion project, will be hosting this Ultimate Freedom. So passion is really a very conducive theme for precisely ultimate freedom. Don't you agree, Alexis?
It's also connected, and lately this has been like very much in the front for me. This last few months have been such a deep time, and my mind has been on a holiday. So I would firstly like to apologize and thank for everyone for understanding, because I've made enormous amounts of date mistakes on website and all of these kind of things, because my mind has just not been present. Like I think I put in the right date, and then a week later I look at it, it's like by magic it's something completely different. And yet, I mean, it all worked out fine, but it's just, and it's a lot of humor, but it's
Yeah.
just been such a different time. And also it's been time also away from public eye a little bit. So I've sort of been very much in my own space, because there's just been this allowance of Christ consciousness. And that is just such a private experience where firstly, it's not that you have words. I didn't have words to explain, but it's also such an intimate, private, sacred experience that one has to experience for themselves, and me included. And it wasn't really time for a lot of sharing, a lot of things on social media and stuff. It was very much time just to experience, to be with myself. And also another thing before we go into it, I would also like to thank the wonderful clients that I have, that contact me, that work with me. I can't, like, I get so amazed and so honored by the type the kind of people that actually come and want to share and want to experience, want to participate in things. They're people with magical stories, incredible experiences, and so much heart and so much love. And that I really want to say thank you, because you enrich my life in such incredible ways. And I'm amazed by you every time, I'm amazed by all of you, and what you're experiencing, and the richness that you bring to my life. And also, of course, here I am, Michael, and I also want to thank each and every one of you for playing in this way, because we are having some incredible experiences, are we not? Each and every one of you are touching that part of you that is sacred, that some of you call soul, that some of you call higher self. It matters not what you call it, but you are starting to really appreciate your human self, this sacred part of the soul. Because so much of the human history, this part was downtrodden, and in this lifetime, because of your experiences also, you have perhaps felt that you were the unappreciated, depreciated part of perhaps of who you are. You didn't feel your value, and yet you are this incredible part of soul, that soul has released, has freed itself to go into this void where there was nothing before, to go into this reality and create physical reality through you. Because it is not like the physical reality is created first and then you come in as a human. You human create physical reality as you go through your senses, through your magic, through your beingness, and through that you explore new realities. You explore, not only explore, you create new worlds, and you are here to explore and feel the love, and to feel the nuances, and to feel your feelings, and through them to ponder on things, to experience new things, to always explore new ways of being, new ways of relating. And thus then you keep creating the new worlds, you keep creating these new experiences, you keep going out into the void where there was nothing before, and there you are, and here you are. And through you, the human, then the soul self can then flow through and also experience, touch, and then harvest the incredible wisdom that you, human, only you, uniquely you, are able to provide, to gift your soul with. And so it's a continual gifting between the human and the soul. And yes, for a lot of the times you do go into spaces where you feel yourself as one, and sometimes you feel yourself as many. Sometimes you feel yourself, there are days where you feel yourself much more human, and for some of you that are participating, you haven't actually experienced yet that presence of your soul in a very conscious way, but you are here because you are starting to. You have been touched, perhaps you've had experiences in the past where you've gone out of your mind and you've touched the other world, you've touched the other side of the veil. And now the process begins where you are allowing those two worlds to bridge, the heaven and earth, for the marriage to occur, for you to be able to experience the presence of your soul. And that resolves everything in your life, not initially, because initially, of course, you go through a lot of the clearing, but in the long term, it resolves everything, because it is not like you have to do any particular things. It's just this presence that you're allowing with you, the human. You then co-create completely different worlds. You experience love in nuances, in the fineness, in such different kind of feelings that you've never experienced before, that not only you have never experienced before, but they have never been experienced in any of the worlds, because each one of you is unique. You are unique. You are an incredibly important, vital part of your soul self, loved incredibly. And yet I ask you, I, Michael, ask you, each and every one of you, how are you allowing that love to flow between the two of you, between the soul? Are you allowing that incredible feeling, that presence of Christ consciousness to be in your life? allowing, surrendering. That's the theme now, the flow, the water. It's the giving into all that of who you are, this incredible presence that wants to be with you, dear sacred human. And the adventure has just begun. The adventure of this marriage between heaven and earth has just begun. And we on the so-called other side, we don't know how it's going to pan out, how we're going to experience this, what's going to happen, what we're going to create. And this is why it is so exciting for all of us, because it is the new worlds that we are creating. The dream that was dreamed long ago by your soul is now here, is now manifesting. And what was that dream? To co-create with the human part, with the human self as whole, the new worlds, and see and experience what that is like, what it's like to be outside of duality, what it's like to be love, what it's like to be love in action, what it is like to love. That is going to be, and it is quite a different reality than what you were used to up until now. And so let's begin the adventure. Over to you, dear Tanya.
Love. Love is that everlasting moment. It's like once you really step into that love affair between human and divine, there's nothing else really. And the other day I was hanging up the washing, and all of a sudden I was feeling, geez, wow, how lucky am I that in every single interaction there is love. Every single interaction. And even more profoundly with my clients, who I am also so, so grateful for, there is not one single person, magnificent being, magnificent human being that I have interacted with within my work, so-called work, that we have not developed a profound connection, so profound that the bond remains beyond time and space, no matter what comes to pass and no matter how often we ever communicate. Because this communication of love, it transcends time and space, and it doesn't even require any words for a long, long period of time for the human, it seems. But things happen. And so sometimes people tell me, you were with me the other night or the other day, you showed up and we had this conversation, and there was this and that. And I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, I do travel a lot, don't I? And probably, so it's like I'm showing up all over the place more and more, because more and more people tell me, like, you showed up and we, well, oh, okay, right. And that's one of the reasons I feel that I've been so earthbound, just like you, is there is this wanting to just stay still in my own space with not too much communication other than this communication, and of course with my clients, but it's this need to be alone a lot of the time, really a lot of the time,
A
and
lot
knowing
of the time.
a lot, more and more. And not only alone, I found, which is something
Oh.
so, so different for me, this wanting to stay in my own house,
Mm,
not necessarily inside. I don't mean indoors, because I have a huge piece of land
mm,
with a lot of garden and a lot of space to play
mm,
outside. But this not wanting to grab the car or any other kind of mean
mm,
of transport, to just walk and to just be in so much in the body, to experience so much, just staying in the same space, in the same place, and yet traveling so much
mm, mm,
beyond time and space. And so it's been,
mm,
for me, it's been a really different kind of
mm, mm,
experience.
mhm.
so fulfilling, incredibly fulfilling. But the love, it keeps on dawning on me. And I've recently coined the name of miracle assistance for what I do, because I just assist people to realize the miracles that are right there that they are producing. Because everyone is producing what we usually call miracles because they seem sort of out of the ordinary.
Mm, mm,
But the thing is, they are hiding in plain sight. So
mm,
sometimes the miracles are happening at the same time
mm,
as a person is perceiving the opposite, is
mm,
perceiving something really dreary, something scary, whatever. And but at the
mm,
same time, exactly at the same time, there is a miracle unfolding
mm,
in that person's life. A miracle because it seems, whoa, absolutely transcendent.
mm,
And so the thing is, it's just a little adjustment of perception, and with that tweak, where we fall into whatever a person wants to call it, higher consciousness, expanded consciousness, soul, essence, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just that, boom, you bounce into that, and all of a sudden, what you see is completely different than what you were
mm.
seeing a second ago.
And
And this
everything
is
is then sacred, isn't it? And this is the
right,
thing, is that
everything.
everything is sacred. And this is what Michael was talking about as well. It
Right,
is that, like as human, we just saw ourselves as so downtrodden, as so like disconnected. And yet when you
exactly.
actually can actually perceive what an incredibly sacred part of your soul the human
You
part
are.
is, each, and
Yes.
then everything you experience, even those dreary things, the depression things, are this how can I say, an expression of God into physical reality. It is the feeling, you're feeling the spaces, you're exploring,
Mm-hmm.
you're making up mind, is because all of these things you're exploring, how you are the creator, who you are, how you create, because then you can then realize yourself as a creator and then create new worlds based on all of the experiences, because then okay, this is not good. I'm not gonna add this to the new worlds that I'm creating, because I've
Right.
experienced it and it's not that good. I didn't like it, simply that. And so everything in everyday life, and to actually then live like this, it is
Mm-hmm.
such a, like, it's like just like you become this bubbling thing. You just keep bubble and bubble
A
and bubble,
bubbling
because
spring. A
yeah,
bubbling
yeah,
spring.
because you just this happiness just keeps bubbling, and perhaps you can see all these terrible news around in the world, and you just keep bubbling and bubbling this joy. It's like, and especially when all that ancestral stuff that we've taken on lifts, which it has in the last few months. I don't know whether you noticed, Tanya, but in these last few
Oh,
months, this ancestral, one day it just was gone, and I'm thinking, wow, I am actually now really finally, I can be me, not
mm-hmm.
not that ancestral thing who I thought I was. And it's all of this kind of me. It's just bubbling up, and it's quite different than what I thought before, when wearing that mantle of ancestry. And that ancestry has been clearing forever. Like, there've been layers and
Yeah.
layers. And every time you think, wow, that was a huge clearing. 2 years ago, I was thinking, wow, that was a huge clear, and it was. But that, because there are such layers, it just, this time it feels like, okay, now it's gone. And the funny thing is, the most amazing thing about it that I found, that I think a lot of people are interested also, is that for me, the body has changed. Well, the passion,
Mm-hmm.
yes, the passion, because all of a sudden you have your own passion, rather than something that was passed down from the generations. All of a sudden you realize, wow, I actually like this and this and this, and not so much that. You start to really be clear even more as to what is your passion, and you can allow it. There's no more blockages, because there's no more shame, or what should be or shouldn't be. But also, you can really then feel, I can feel my body changing incredibly, because that ancestry moving, it's like that light body now has space in my cells to really take hold in each and every cell and to change it into something that is me. And I feel my body being so healthy and so youngish. And even though I don't, I wake up quite early again before sunrise, so not much sleep because there's so much happening, and as soon as I wake up, there's just this Christ consciousness flowing and this incredible love that I feel like I can't tolerate anymore. Stop, I can't tolerate. And then a minute later, yeah, give me more. It's kind of like, it's actually quite funny because you become so lighthearted and funny with all of this, no more seriousness. And I joke with my soul, I joke with Michael, I joke with Saint Germain or whatever, whomever. It's just like this beautiful, incredibly happy. This is a real happiness now that in the last decade. There were glimpses, and there were glimpses in the childhood when I sort of glimpsed, okay, this is me. And then all that heaviness of the world came and pushed it down again. But now it's finally, wow, this now is here. And it's incredible how joyful, like you said, in this privacy of home, but all of a sudden there's all of these potentials that I didn't think I would be even interested in, like even feeling like a teenager with maturity, because there's all of these potentials that I'm thinking, wow, I'm going to explore this, I'm going to explore that, because as being the designated SND or the designated clearer in this lifetime, as a human, actually did suffer quite a bit, because there were so many things, and probably each one can relate with that, where you looked at other people and you tried to copy them, and it just didn't work out. There were so many things that were just closed off to you, and it was just had to do with not having these distractions. Perhaps it had to do with not having children, not having family, not having all sorts of things that you looked at other people, and it was so easy for others, so natural, and yet you tried, and it's like the door was always closed. And it was because there was this huge integration in front of you, and so the soul was very much involved. It's funny because before there was this feeling soul is somewhere else, and yet now I realize, so there was never anywhere else. It was never anywhere else. It was always so present. It was always guiding. It was always, you were always safe as a human, and you were always guided. And unfortunately for the human also in this life, there were some things that it wasn't time, because you had to integrate. And so this is for me now, I'm experiencing, okay, now I'm realizing, wow, I didn't do it when I was 20, I didn't do this when I was 30, but now I'm going to do it, because now I am finally free. The big job is behind me, it is done, and now it's like, wow, I can just do anything I want. So it's a very kind of different time then. And this also has to do with passion, because as many of people know, with passion you lose passion through this integration, because you lose that human limited passion, the passion that was given to you by ancestry, perhaps by mass consciousness. And then for a few years, maybe you feel completely passionless, even things perhaps like sports or whatever that you used to enjoy. When you go through this full-on final integration, you lose, because instead that passion gets wiped out, gets released, so that your real whole soul passion can come in. And that, like Tanya said at the beginning, it's very, very different. It's quiet, but all encompassing, and has such deep feeling, and it has such deep, this bubbling of joy present with it. And it is completely invincible, like there is nothing in this world that can stop it, that can put it down, that can even that can even muddy it or anything, because that also was, for some people, it is fear. They feel that, wow, if I bring the soul into this harsh reality, it may get lost. It's not true. It actually, it can't be lost. It can't be even a speck of dust is not wiped out of it. It's always full and complete and fully present. So this is my passion. Sorry if I talk a lot. Over to you, Tanya, but there's my passion just coming through.
Joyce, talk away. That's fantastic. While I was listening to you,
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
smiling all the time
yeah.
because it's not only the words you're saying; it's precisely the frequency that comes through, and that frequency is that bubbling, joyful freedom of being within oneself, whole within oneself, and realizing, oh my God, it's all here. It's all here, and it's been here all along. So my experience has been quite different than yours because I realized I came to Earth many, many, many times, and this lifetime I chose like, okay, we're not compromising. So I didn't know this, obviously. I only knew this when this happened, or a while after it happened, actually. I gave myself an explosion. So it was like sort of when I was integrated enough. Um, so I just had this need to integrate really fast, and I did everything I could, and I used to take up hours of my day doing integration back in 2008, 2009, 2010, and so. And it was like doom, 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 and it's so much that I would get exhausted because it was so much energy that was released in so many lifetimes. I mean, I lived everything, every possible best and worst anyone can dream up. I lived it. But then I got so stuck with that, because coming to Earth became a passion, but in the other sense, it was kind of like so seductive, such a passion to come here for whatever, like, let's just go and experience another whatever. Let's now be a murderer. Let's now be a goddess, a priestess. Let's now be whatever, rapist, whatever stuff, everything. Okay, just like everything. But that was a kind of passion, but that passion got me stuck, and it got me stuck in constantly wanting to experience more of this, until apparently this lifetime it was my enough lifetime. And so for myself I created this massive explosion that could go in whichever way. The thing was no compromise. So the explosion will happen, and either you handle it or you don't. But it's going to happen. So it's sort of like, I didn't know it was like it was already there on the charts, and that's why I realize that's why I had this thirst for integration, and it had to happen, and I knew I was gonna be integrated. It was just like, it's obvious.
A given. It's a
So
given,
when
right?
I heard Tobias in the aspectology course saying, many of you will experience many years with all of your aspects all integrated, like in fulfillment, in bliss. And at that time when I heard that, that's what I'm going for, and I'm sure that's it. And so when the massive explosion happened, which it was an explosion really per se, because it's like my mind exploded, my body just sort of disintegrated without disintegrating, because I remained in the body but didn't feel like I was physical. And in that moment of explosion, if I hadn't been ready, because it happened as soon as I faced terror. So terror came to me, the greatest fear. Nothing at all, not a specific fear of anything specific, just like terror, huge terror. And at that moment I looked at it and smiled. It's nothing. This is nothing. And at that moment, everything burst into smithereens. And so if I hadn't been ready, I could have gone crazy, I could have died, I could have gone ill, bedridden, whatever. It doesn't matter. Anyway, it didn't happen that way. It happened in the best possible way, which I'm very grateful for, to myself, for having said yes so adamantly, and said, no, that's the way, that's the way, I want to go that way, that's the way. And even when it was really hard, and I can tell you it was really hard, because I kept on calling, no, it's not just from this lifetime, all of the lifetimes, come on, come on, yes, you're welcome, come on. And then, massive avalanche. And then after I was through one avalanche, I said, okay, okay, so if there's more, come, come, come. And I was like, come, 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 come. And it was massively out of proportion, but I realized why, and that I was capable to do that. Now, I don't recommend this. Like, it's not something I recommend, because this is something that one does when one feels it. You just do it. You're not thinking, this is how I'm gonna integrate. No, it's a natural thing. It happens as you go. So for most, for many people, it's much smoother, and fortunately so, because there isn't that that danger of disintegration, in because in that moment of complete integration I could have disintegrated as well. I didn't, fortunately. I'm here, and if I had, it wouldn't have been much of an issue, because I'd just have gone away and then come back again, and probably much easier, because I'd already integrated a lot before that. So it wouldn't have been a big deal, you know. We make such a big deal about like at this moment there are many people departing, and many of these people that are departing will come back again. And there's it's not a big deal, because when
No.
we're coming back from a different point of consciousness, things don't have to be, are not going to be the way they were so far. And also because the consciousness on earth is changing in such a way that going to the other side and then coming back in again will allow for a very fresh start. And so it's not a big deal. We tend to sort of, you know, want to hang on to, you know, but I've done that much already, so let me not lose the opportunity. We never do. We never lose the opportunity. It seems so very often, and I'm sure I lost the opportunity countless times throughout those over almost 2000 lifetimes that I had. So many times for sure it seemed like losing the opportunity. And yet we are here now. I am here now, you are here now, we are all here now having this conversation, and nothing was really lost. So, if anyone listening is going through a big avalanche of overwhelm with integration, with stuff coming, and feeling completely discombobulated, chill. It's okay. It does pass, and you're not losing the opportunity, because you can't. And the reason why you can't lose the opportunity is because you are the exact expression of your essence in that moment. So whatever it is that you're expressing or experiencing, be it the darkest of the dark of the whatever it is adding up to your pool of consciousness. And what does that mean? Means that the darkness seems to be dark. It just seems to be dark, because in actual fact it is a shadow, and a shadow doesn't exist. So a shadow only exists when you're standing in it and you feel shadowed by it. Right? It's like you're in the shade of a tree. You only feel it when you're in that shade.
And it helps if it's very hot and sunny.
Right, exactly. It will have its use.
Benefits,
Right.
yes.
But then once you allow the light of your consciousness, and I would prefer to say lightness than
Lightness
light.
of being. Yeah.
Right. When you allow that lightness, what it does is it dissolves the shadowy darkness, because it sheds clarity over everything, and then you
Mm.
can see. And then when you can see, you realize, oops, oh, that was just me living a reverse illusion of what I truly
Mm.
am. Wow. Now, how creative is that? That we were capable of
Mm.
creating a reverse illusion of who we are, and still at the same time maintain who we are accessible. So at any moment, if you take that deep breath, that is the click moment, boom, you realize, oh wow, that's me. I'm also this.
Mm.
So it's just that shift of perception. Now, going back to what I was sharing before, so for me it was an explosion, of course, after having done a lot of integration. And after that, it's like everything, the rest of whatever needed to dissolve dissolved at once. But that doesn't mean at all, and that's why I'm sharing this, that this happened 9 years ago. That doesn't mean that in these 9 years I haven't been transforming, transmuting. My physical body hasn't been challenged into allowing more and more of the light, what we call the light body, which I call the crystalline body, to become one with the already physical body that was here. So this has been happening, continues happening, and will continue happening. And it is at times painful. At times you just feel like disappearing, because it's like nothing makes sense around you. Because once you have a clarity about things, only compassion can be the guiding light. And sometimes, even with compassion, it's challenging because you can see past the illusions. And so you see them everywhere. And so there are moments where you just have to step back and say, okay, I accept absolutely everything just the way it is. And it's not that it's happening in your own reality. Most of the time it isn't, but you can just see through everything and everyone, and that is a challenge in itself. But on the other hand, this bubbling joy, this gratitude, this love is so, so, so vast that it easily just comes through. And what I found is, whenever I am seeing through massive illusions that are out of proportion, it seems to be like, why is this still happening on earth? You know,
Mm.
that kind
Mm.
of feeling. And I look at that and I realize, oh, the reason I'm now perceiving this is simply
Mm.
to bring in another perspective. And so, just by seeing whatever it is, so facing it, so we don't live with our head buried in the sand. No, not at all.
Mm.
We are aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
So sometimes to some people it might seem like we're very airy fairy and living
Mm.
in the clouds, and no, not at all.
Mm.
We're living, yes, this bubbling joy because it's here, it's all the time. There is this peace. Since that moment of my explosion, as I call it, the peace never went away, ever, ever
Mm.
again. So the peace remained and expands and it grows, and the silence, it just grows and grows and grows. It seems impossible. How can it still grow? I mean, it's already so silent, and then it grows and it grows, and the compassion. So I
Mm.
realize when we allow ourselves to look at stuff that is not, nice to look at, like that no one really likes to look at, but we look at it and see it from a different standpoint, because we can't see it in the
Mm.
same dualistic, limited way we saw it before. So we're seeing it from another perspective, though, of course, we won't go and condone crime or whatever. No, but we're seeing it beyond what it just seems. We're bringing in a possibility. We're bringing in a potential to that situation, to whatever, just by looking at it, just by not running away from it, just by not pretending it's not there or it's not
Yeah.
happening somewhere. And then all of a sudden it smooths off. Like, it doesn't mean that that situation there, wherever it's happening, changes immediately, but there is a smoothing where the compassion comes in and things just. So it's like things pass through us, like we're a sift, and things pass through us, and the darkest darkness stays to be transmuted, and then it moves forward. So my last 9 years have been years of living incredible joy, incredible beauty, just incredible miracles and all that, but also, and at the same time, big challenges. The physical body has been very, very challenged. I've gone through moments of extreme discomfort. And whenever there is a new calibration, because there are periodically new calibrations of frequency, the more the body becomes crystalline. So whenever there's a big shift of that, like we're clearing more of the, as you say, the ancestral humanity, basically, as a whole, not even as a family kind of thing, is the humanity thing. When there's these shifts in the physicality, the body goes through a very sensitive kind of period where we feel even more, and so it becomes a little bit uncomfortable to be in certain environments, and then it adjusts. There again, it is smooth, and then it's comfortable to be in those same environments, and it's fine. So basically what I'm getting at is respect yourself all the time, 100% of the time. And just because you achieve, it seems like you achieve something, right, by being realized, conscious, whatever, it is not an achievement. It is a journey, and the journey goes on, and it never, ever, ever ends, because we are infinite. We are infinite beings. So it's not like we have a kind of an arrival point. Okay, now I've arrived here. That's it. Sealed. Nothing else to do. No more evolution. Nothing. No, obviously. So when the passion goes away, which it happens to every single one of us on this path of expansion, that's not the end of the line either. It goes away, fortunately, so that we can release the old concepts of passion, what we thought passion to be, and then start experiencing the passion of Christ, which is the crystalline consciousness. And that crystalline consciousness is naturally enlightening. And therefore, whichever dark corners might have existed disappear within that crystalline consciousness, because it's transparent. Nothing is hiding within it. This is one of the things I felt most strongly, the fact that nothing is hiding. We
And
don't
that
need to hide
and
from
that is
anyone or
or ourselves.
ourselves.
And that is, I found, like you maybe you found too, is it's just such an ecstatic experience where you actually don't have to hide. And
Yes,
when you're experiencing all of those stages, and you are used to, as a human being, to have to pretend like you go to work,
exactly.
in schools and everywhere you are in a society, as a child, you're perhaps free, but then you learn the etiquette and how to
Everything.
behave and and in school you have to behave, and they just train you to suppress yourself, and they train
Yes.
you to become that kind of more like an automaton, so that you can do the Monday to Friday, that many hours at work and stuff, which is very, very unnatural. And all of these things, like with all these new worlds, it is not that people won't have to work, because people do. We have to create, we have to look after our body, we do become even more, but we just create the world and society that is much, much more natural and to us and to everything around. And this is what is actually quite amazing, when you actually allow this presence, how like you can create. And that's what, like each one of us, for us, within this world that is still so unfree, within the people that are still so trapped in slavery, and not just like in a working way, but how they perceive, for example, love. Like I used to think love was actually slavery, because you were bound to really toxic things. You were bound to having to help others that didn't want to help themselves, and they, all of that feeding, energy feeding, and all of that. So there was a lot of to extricate yourself from. But now there really is a way that each one of us have experimented, perhaps, and found a way to live within this space, but in a very natural way. Like I find myself that I now have space to if I need to sleep all day, like have to keep taking naps because it's a huge integration day, I
Yeah.
can. I don't have to do. And it all works in such a beautiful harmony and this balance, that it's like the waves come, and all of a sudden I have a clear day where I don't have anything, and I can just completely relax into doing whatever I need to be doing or not doing. So and having the free time, being outside of that Monday to Friday. For me, Monday is a wonderful day now, because it doesn't
Yeah.
exist, in that old way. And so we find this way to really become much, much more natural, and the human self can relax and allow this abundance and flow of energy to come from this presence, which looks after, because you allow, for those of us that perhaps haven't had experiences with positive parenting, many of us have experienced quite hard, perhaps, childhoods and stuff. There comes a time where you meet that divine mother, and there comes a time when you meet that divine father, and the divine father and mother, it's like what people really miss. That's because they do. And it's that ideal that a lot of people don't experience, that also comes. And it does look like a dream initially, but then you realize that what I perceived, I realized when I sort of became really conscious of my divine masculine and feminine. And not that I want to focus on that as much, but I'm just saying that those parts that have felt abandoned by parenting, and perhaps that's like an angelic journey where we left the heaven and the paradise, and it feels like we've been abandoned by God. And that's why there's such a mythology within the human stories about this, because so much of us can feel that. Know that there comes a day when you meet within you that divine sacred father and that divine sacred mother, and then you can then allow that union, and it can allow the feeling of being taken care of, the feeling of being loved. And that's another beautiful experience during all of these integration times, because it is this then that then gives you ability to allow the flow to happen, to allow the abundance to happen, to allow yourself to feel safe, to give yourself to this greater presence, because you do need to surrender. You keep surrendering, and you keep allowing yourself to be seen, and you keep going into this kind of really ecstatic experiences. But they're not like you said, this airy fairy. They're very real experiences of this incredible being able to just be seen for all the what you thought were flaws. And that is so refreshing from what we were taught as a human being, that you have to hide, that. And that is what happens to people. They have these double lives where you have to hide parts and just sort of put a best face forward. And here you actually, the soul wants you to reveal everything to it. It wants you to give everything to it. It wants to see and perceive and take pleasure in every part of you, because it considers every part, even those parts that you think are dark, it considers them an essential part of itself. And so, like, these shadowy parts for me now, I mean, I can be cruel easily because I know cruelty, but it doesn't really feel to me as a shadowy part anymore. So all of the parts now, none of it feels dark. None of it feels that I can't look at it. None of it feels horrible. I can just, oh yeah, that part, yeah, that feeling, no problem. It doesn't mean I have to act on it. And I wouldn't, because now with love and compassion, and love has changed enormously. You know what it used to mean for me? Love used to, like, when you look at other people also, for example, today I had to giggle, not in a good way or whatever, because I do macro photography. And so in the group where you have those kind of little insects and spiders and butterflies, there are many people still that they will say, well, I love all of these creatures. And then they show you what they have, and it's they've killed them all and they stick them on a pin and put them on a wall. And that to them means love. And that's what I mean, is like all of these ideas completely change, because their idea of love, if that's what love means to them, that's how they behave, not only to other creatures, but in a partnership. Because this is the very distorted, well, to me now it looks like a very distorted way to love, because I'm thinking, well, don't come to my house if this is what you think it's love, because you're not going to put me, you know what I mean? It's not a person I want to have a relationship with if that's what you think is love, and this is what I like. For example, you can see it a lot, like, with parents and children, and but of course, especially also with other creatures, when you look at people, it's like, wow, I love this, or I love horses, but wow, but you're actually using them. That you can see how you look at love. And if for people that perhaps wonder, why is love so difficult? Why are relationships very difficult for me? Examine what you believe about love, because this is what we are here for as human beings. It is, we are to experience, to enrich these things. Let's say if you start off with a very difficult way of loving or perceiving or allowing love, because for some people, what for another looks very toxic, for another person looks like, wow, this is what love means, because they don't know any better. But this is exactly what we are here for. It is to feel what doesn't work. It is to expand, to enrich, to bring that light into that situation, so that you expand this feeling of love. And perhaps you had distortion before, or you weren't happy with the way you felt love or how you related. So it's not that you have done a mistake there. This is your purpose as a human being, to expand all of these things. And like you beautifully were explaining earlier about how we are constantly transforming. And for me too, like, for example, now I went through a lot of different stages with this. So for me, because I was always so open to energies, that emphatic, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it was very hard through sometimes to go into like people that were still unawakened. Like I could really feel those energies and were very painful to me. And still now they're not comfortable, but now it's kind of like I've even more in an additional way become immune to their sting. It's like I can feel them, and I can feel them that they're not pleasant, and it's not something I want to keep creating or create new worlds with part of them in it. But like you said, I can transform them them. And that's what I do. Like I notice too, I do that all day long. From the wake up, I feel some energy. You know, you wake up, you come back to here, you feel all sorts of mass consciousness energies. And all of a sudden, I start working. How do I come out of this? You know, how do I find it, like you said, a different way of looking at things? And it's like we keep creating templates to feed into the mass consciousness, so that then they are available to everyone then. And then the next day you see how some scientist or someone else somewhere else has come up with this idea that you were thinking a day before, and it's like, wow, look, they picked up on that idea from the mass consciousness that I've put in there. And this is what all of us that are in this stage, that are integrated or partially integrated, are doing continually. We're just creating these ways out from the stuckness. The humanity, mass consciousness was so stuck, but now there's all these solutions to everything, because we continually come up with these energetic solutions, and we feed the templates all the time. And, you know, like you can scan the news. And for me now, and this is another big change that has happened. And I know that for a lot of people do still feel pain when they look at the news titles or what's going on in the world. I find now that it's lost completely the sting. It's like it's not anymore. None of this is mine anymore. And it's kind of like watching it on YouTube video, very separated, but at the same time, I allow it to flow through me and then transform it, like you said, but it just doesn't have any more pain. And this can sort of like sound like selfish or callous, but it isn't, because it's like a soul, when soul allows that freedom to experience, and yet it doesn't actually take on the pain or suffering, because it knows it's not real. So when you can see, like you mentioned, that all of this is not real, it's just a game, then you can look at it from a much higher sort of vantage point, and it doesn't hurt anymore. And yet at the same time, you can absolutely transform it for yourself within you, and then feed it back into that mass consciousness so that it is available. And so the mass consciousness, I feel, it's no longer like perhaps a few years back, it was still very, very stuck. But especially this year, I feel that it's really started to move. It started to expand. And you can feel like you can look at the news and say, wow, you know, they're now acknowledging there that are UFOs, and perhaps, you know, like all of these kind of things. It just means that it's all opening up, and there are people, for example, big people, perhaps not politicians yet, but there's so much happening that is just expanding with these ideas and new ways of doing things and new solutions for all of the issues that people thought, you know, that they cannot be resolved. And this is all because of the work that we're doing, because it's like we're putting this elasticity, the flow, into the mass consciousness. And so but also it means that a person has to be able to do that switch and be able to perceive it, because unless that happens for them, they will still just see, you know, the negative stuff. And this is what I've also seen. There is like a big division now happening between the people, because some people are just choosing, no, this is too hard, I can't do this, you know, I can't change, I don't want to change. And they're going into more be sticking to what they know, because they find safety in not changing. But like, you know, there was an interesting time, like you mentioned 2009, and, you know, 2012 was huge for those. You know, it was, that time was huge, and many light workers at that time imagined that everything in one day will change, you know, and all of a sudden there will be a nirvana and heaven here. And then it was a big disappointment, and they didn't know what to do with it. And one of these people was my mother. She left then in February 2013. She left all of a sudden because she just couldn't handle the disappointment, and also because the previous generation was trudging through such heavy energies, which impacted their bodies, it impacted their psyche. And so for them then they left, And for me, like, then I realized my mom, I know that she's reincarnated because I know which person she is now, and she's in a very, very different space. And this is another thing that can give a person a comfort, because when you open yourself up, you actually perceive all the other worlds, and you perceive all of these things that are happening. And of course, still I felt grief, because the person absolutely changes when they leave that person that they were for whatever number of years that they carried that name is gone. But then you actually do meet their soul self, which has the same signature, so you recognize it, but it's not the same person. Like my mother doesn't in this way exist anymore. It didn't exist anymore. So you do still have experience grief and all of that, but in a very, very different way. And so I would like to give perhaps some comfort to those people that have perhaps lost loved ones in all of these last couple of years with COVID. And many people are losing people because they just all of a sudden be sick and leave, or perhaps commit suicide even. But just know that like, that really there is no death. It is just a transformation. And when they come back, and it's not just one earth, it's not just one reality, perhaps they've gleaned as a soul different potentials where they can actually develop much more in another way. So that's one thing. And another thing also is when you realize yourself and you perceive yourself and experience yourself as timeless, as eternal, then a lot of the things that as a human were important, of course, don't, and we keep saying that, don't make sense anymore. And one of them is that a person will forever be something to you, the same thing. And so you really have to find a way to be okay that, okay, some person has acted as a mother for 90 years, whatever, but that was it, 90 years. Then they go back into their, into their own soul, whatever, and they start a new journey. You will not be a mother daughter or mother son anymore. And it's the same with lovers, like how within the human marriage there are all those kind of, oh, we're going to love each other forever. When you realize that you're eternal, the forever takes on a completely different meaning, and there isn't this.
You are, because we are in love. That's our nature.
We are in love, but we don't.
But not in
married.
The attachment.
That's right.
Attachment.
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's the thing we didn't get.
That's right. And we love many. And this is another thing, when you realize, wow, I actually have loads of angelic connections. I love many, so to say, well, I'm just going to be in partnership relationship with someone forever until death do us part. It just doesn't make any sense anymore. So
fortunately, there's death in this world.
Exactly, because we would really be in trouble. I mean, this other side actually operates in quite different way than and so as this part of yourself that is human, you do make a lot of different adjustments. And like you said, you go through all of these things. You look at, okay, what does this now mean to me? What does marriage mean to me? What does lovers mean to me? What does parenting mean to me in this new context? And this is actually quite a lot of fun. Like I quite enjoy. This is one of those parts that I really was made for. When I realized this passion, what is this passion? Part of my passion is because I do love finding ways out. Like, when I sort of see some kind of title somewhere, some bad news title, to find a way out. It's like, it's just something that I love within myself to find, with feeling, with thought. Okay, how do we find a different perception, perspective? And then I call upon my, all my soul self. I allow that part to be present, and we work it out together, and it's just a beautiful way to, and that's why we're so busy, and that's why we need just maybe sitting on some bench, and that's why we also need a lot of time, because by ourselves, because we're not really by ourselves. Technically we're not, but we are just continually involved with this kind of much grander, well, that's perhaps it's a misleading word, but in these kind of huge big questions, and then you can feel yourself like when humanity keeps coming to some kind of forks, like that there's big choices, and you can feel yourself being at that meeting and making the decision, okay, which way we're going, and you really feel yourself giving input into, like, the future of humanity, or which way this is going, which way that is going. And it is because you're conscious of yourself, not as whole, because not you never, because then it would be boring. You're always exploring yourself, but you are conscious of so much of yourself. You have knowingness, you hear, there's this instant communication, and you are part of this much, much larger world. And you don't need to sort of wait, how people say, well, we're going to wait for some aliens to land, because that is such a 3D interpretation of the reality as it really is, and that the reality that we as humans are also very part of, but haven't perceived, and many still don't perceive up until now, because we were working out those other things. We were working out who we are, and we needed that time, as humanity, to just be separate, to work out our own inner things, and also to find the soul within, because it is the soul within this light body with which you can then travel. You don't need to put yourself in a tin rocket. You can if you want to, as an experience, but you can travel to other planets, to other realities. That's what the light body is. That's what, we were made for, this kind of things, to travel the dimensions, to travel spaces, to travel, but it's all on the inside. You don't have to put yourself for 10 years into a tin can to reach Mars or whatever. You can, that's what I mean, if you want to experience that. But so this is that alternative that we are creating, that more natural, alternative, intuitive, heart-based way of being, that is paralleling those that are still within mass consciousness and want to then know that more is possible, but feel it can only be achieved by tech implants, by all of these kind of things, because that is only an imitation of what is really available to every human being. But of course, it does require the work of integration. Without that, all of these worlds are close to you. You cannot perceive them. So when people say, well, mass ascension, this is one of the biggest lies, really, because you cannot pull humanity into another reality. I can't do the work for another person. They have to do it themselves, and then the new reality becomes visible to them. But if they choose to stay, and of course everything is much more lit up now, so much more is visible to every single human being, but they still have to integrate, because they need to get in touch with their own inner resources, with the kingdom of God within, with the inner abilities, with the inner feelings, to be able then to become conscious of the world that they actually are part of. And so in this way, for me, like the analogy that I like to give for all of this, it's like before we felt when you feel yourself separate as a separate human being, it's as if you think you're just one hand. So you perceive yourself, let's say you have a whole body, and you perceive yourself as a one hand. So all of this is just becoming aware that you are a whole body. That, let's say, if you're a person that has two hands, two legs, you have a heart, you become aware. So it's not like that you're adding all these things. You already are a whole body, and you always have operated as a whole body, because the reality wouldn't be able to exist without the whole body being there. But it's just that you, as a human within mass consciousness, you are only aware of one hand. So this whole integration is this, and a lot of the times then we thought, this shadow self is this this part that is all the time messing up my reality. But it was only messing up because you actually have two hands, and the other hand was also always available to you and doing stuff and fully participating into your reality. You just were not conscious of it. You just thought you were just one hand. And but then also with this process, it's not only that you become aware of that you're a full body, that you have head, two eyes, and all of that, but it is also that these become healthy and improve and continually, and that's what expansion means. They become more aware, they become more able, they become more like you're able to do more. It's like all of a sudden you can play an instrument that you didn't know how to do before, you see. So as you allow more and more awareness, as you allow more and more light, it all not improves, perhaps it's not it all expands, and it continually expands. And it is just such an exciting way to be. And I know that for some who are still perhaps more at the beginning of this last leg of the journey, because you would have done a lot of work in previous lifetimes to even be here in this way. But it sounds perhaps that airy fairy, but it is very real. It is very practical, and it is and it is very life changing, and you keep changing your reality in a very real and physical way. So it is not airy fairy at all, but you keep being more and more present within your life, in everyday life.
I'd like to go back to the death part to share that integrating the death of a loved one works exactly the same way as integrating an aspect of ours. And how does it work in the same way? So when we perceive certain emotions, whatever, and then dive into them and then realize it is a part of us. So let's imagine it's a child, just for the sake of example, and because many of the times it is. So this child shows up inside, feeling whatever, sad, lost, lonely, in this particular aspect, and we perceive this child, and then the emotion now is not ours, it is the child's emotion. So we realize we can start detaching from those emotions, but we know that child is us anyway. And then we see the child already as kind of separate but together in both ways. So we become the adult or the grown up or the older self, looking at the child and perceiving what the child was going through. And then this compassion starts coming up, and you start feeling, geez, I didn't realize what it was like for you. And then you really just want to hug this child and hold the child. And then when, if it comes to pass in this particular aspect that you're looking at, that it accepts your hug, it accepts your your presence and starts trusting you immediately, because that doesn't always happen, that sometimes takes time. But anyway, let's consider that this child is accepting to receive your embrace. And then you start realizing how much you needed that child, and how much what that child thought and believed was actually making up your beliefs and what you perceived reality to be and the way you lived it. And then you start realizing, but am I really ready to not have this child here anymore, to let it go? Because once the the complete love takes place, once you and the child are no longer separate, and therefore the child trusts you completely to take care of everything, and you feel so fulfilled that you're finally able to embrace this child. Once that happens, the child starts dissolving and becomes one with you. And then sometimes right before that starts happening, there's this sadness that, I'm gonna miss this part of me. After all, you realize, after all, this part of me has been so present in my life, has been such a good friend. So you've been partners, you've been friends, you've been living this story together for so long that when you realize that that child is really going to dissolve, and so what that child was is no longer gonna be in that form, because when that child dissolves it will still remain, but it will remain in the essence, in the innocence, in everything that was covered up by whatever trauma created the emotions and so on that blocked it there to hold that whatever emotions it was in time and space until you were ready to deal with it. Anyway, that moment of that sadness, that kind of it's a grieving, like really like a funeral, and you feel it, and then yet the pull to love completely is greater than to stay in that grieving sadness and to keep that child alive in that old form, because you realize it's painful. By doing that you would just be causing pain to the child that you were and that still exists if you keep it like that. And so the pull to integrate becomes larger, the love becomes larger. And so at that point, you just sort of merge into one, and there's this beautiful peace, this beautiful wow. This is, oh my God, this feels so good. So you can do the exact same thing with a loved one
Mm-hmm.
departing. And so
Mm-hmm.
no matter whether you
Mm-hmm.
had a clear, beautiful, wonderful relationship with that person, or whether it was a really challenging
Mm-hmm.
relationship and you even didn't speak to each other, but when that person dies, you feel it. And you realize, yeah, we did love each other. Why on earth didn't we talk to each other before? And then you go into guilt and all sorts of stuff like that. Well, deal with that in the exact same way as you would deal with an aspect. Because if you manage to really come to that point where you and that one that you knew as whoever, whatever, where you really come into complete love, and so then you can let that person go. Oh, the level of fulfillment is incredible, and you receive gifts of whatever nature, because each person in your life is a treasure chest. Now I'm very into treasures in this moment, so it's all about jewels and treasures and stuff. And so so this person will leave you their particular unique jewels, because each one has unique
Mm-hmm.
jewels, and you will receive them, and that will enhance you, and
Mm-hmm.
those will add up to your own special treasure chest with the
Mm-hmm.
jewels and all of that, and then you'll never miss that person ever again, because
Mm-hmm.
it won't be missing. It will be a part of you, just like
Mm-hmm.
any other aspect. So this is really being able to transcend the illusion of
Mm-hmm.
death. And in that moment, also, if you haven't done so yet, and if someone dearly beloved has passed, I invite you also to really dive into the grief of loss,
Mm-hmm.
and dive so deep that you will go into all of the griefs of loss that you have been through as a human being, and then they have been many. And allow yourself to go deep into that, to really feel that sadness deep, to allow those memories to come, just to come, nothing to do with them, just come, so you can grieve them all at
Mm-hmm.
once and let go of all of that illusion of loss, because then you'll find yourself on the other side, which is the abundance. And talking about abundance, I'd like to also refer that once you start really tapping into the fact that you never lose anything or anyone, and that nothing or anyone is ever missing, then you have this perception, this awareness that life is super long. So, I like constantly, there's this saying, people say life is short, and I, it isn't short. It's super long. It's super long. Because if you live each day as a continuum, so there is not 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, days are not separate, they're a continuum. You take away the separations between the days so they don't end. So then it's just an endless continuum of life unfolding in this human lifetime that you have been gifted with. So if life can be lived in the complete now moment, and that's how I live it. I'm sure that's how you live it, Alexis. That's in the complete now moment. There is not one moment and the next moment. There's just the continuum. And the days is not like you wake up in a new day and there's new hope, and then you don't need it. You don't need
you
new
don't
hope.
need hope. You don't need
You don't
hope
need
at all.
hope at all. So because
It's meaningless, isn't it?
exactly. So you just wake up in a new moment. The thing is, each breath becomes that new moment, and so you realize that you have loads of time to experience all of the things you still want to experience, but you're not attached that you have to experience this or that or the other in order to be happy, because you're being happy or fulfilled. I prefer that word, because happy can have many different
That's right.
connotations.
Yeah, happy has
So
fulfilled much better.
you feel fulfilled right now, just as it is. So if by any chance that whatever okay, I'd like to experience that, and you do, fantastic. But if you don't, no problem at all. So basically, what happens is that because you're not living on achievements, you're living in the now constant continuum, and that has no achievements. It's just a continuous experiencing of new now moments. Then you realize that nothing, absolutely nothing that is not here right now is necessary. So it can add up. You can, so your new now moments can add up and go into that whatever experience it is, or not. And everything is absolutely fine anyway. So disappointment, or any kind of feeling of lack of whatever, loss, these things disappear in the passion of just being present, in the passion of just living here and now. And then I realize we're coming full circle. So everything becomes sacred, which is where we started. Everything becomes sacred, and you realize that the long life you have ahead of you, even if you die today, it doesn't matter, it really doesn't matter.
Because you
The
exist.
long
Yeah,
exactly, the
you
long life
exist.
you have
Yeah. Yes.
is endless. It's like, so many things to experience
Yes.
in this.
Yes.
Even if you're sitting
Yes.
benching, even if you're sitting quietly doing
Mm-hmm.
nothing, you are experiencing that exquisite just being here now, that fulfillment. And fulfillment is complete,
Mm-hmm.
always.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require anything or anyone else. It doesn't require any other moment. It requires nothing. Fulfillment is complete. So in this fulfillment, which is the passion. It is living the passion, but it's completely different from all of the ideas of passion before. You realize everything is so simple. So absolutely simple. And there you just give up on fighting for or against or whatever, making an effort and you just surrender. And then in that surrender, you discover you've lost nothing, because the greatest fear of the human self in surrendering is precisely losing something. Eventually, I've come across in my work, it's really creative because I come across all sorts of different kinds of aspects with people. And so one is being afraid of going out of existence. And that is totally impossible. You cannot go out of existence because you are a being that exists. So yeah, you might go out of this lifetime. You might, those aspects that are not wanting to integrate will go out of existence in the way they were, but they won't go out of existence completely, because the consciousness of all of that which they have achieved, perceived, learned, lived, experienced, whatever, stays. So nothing really goes out of existence. Some weeks ago, some months ago, whatever, I was having this perception, geez, even if I wanted to, I can't stop existing.
Like, I know, that's annoying at times.
I might as well make this a really great moment.
That was, I must say, like when the human self was, during the integration, was so pissed off at soul at times, and I want to stop existing, and it's like I can't, and it's so annoying not to be able to just cease being.
You can't.
And this, you've explained it in such a beautiful way, Tanya, and it relates like with that death and dying, and it relates with that all being one's own energy, isn't it? Because it is in our own energy we create. Other people inspire us, but we create that image
of them.
So that always stays. And when we are present, like everyone experiences these things a little bit different. And also so for me, that experience was what was I going to say? When there was an experience of this person dying and grieving, and that I thought at that time, 10 years ago, a decade ago, was natural. And I, like you said, I went into deep grief, and then all of that. And then, but it doesn't stop there, because we keep expanding. So for example, now, then the next level of understanding is that, wow, okay, this person, for example, my mother, always lives within my energy, and it belongs to me. And then there was that next experience when I realized, wow, so I'm at this smorgasbord, everything is now. So all of the past lives are still now, and all of the events of this lifetime are in the now moment. And that was so much joy when I've actually experienced that, because I was able to, for example, let's say, go to my teenager self, and I realized that all of those beautiful things initially wasn't beautiful, because what I met was all of those blockages and blah blah blah. But once all of that is integrated, then what stays is that I can actually feel that period of life where I was a teenager self, and now that part also is infused with the presence of the soul, and also keeps changing. And this was a beautiful experience, because before, as a separate human being, it was like, wow, you have some memories and some people that you lost, and yourself as a perhaps 3-year-old, where you were perhaps beautifully free or whatever, all of those beautiful things that actually then all the life up to now becomes incredibly beautiful and sensual, because all of the hard traumatic things I've integrated. And now when I'm in the now moment, I can just visit that space. It's like a room of myself,
Mm.
of the teenager. And that teenager also is growing and is now interacting. And it's just beautiful when the soul part comes in and hugs that and interacts. And there's just this incredible way of being where nothing
Yeah.
is lost, but all is transformed and all is
Mhm.
freed. And this too is actually interesting because not every soul being does experience this in this way, and not
Mm.
every soul being, and I'm not talking about an individual human, but I'm talking about a soul being experiences freedom. There are like the people you can actually follow in the history, the people that are all into the freedom and always have been, and into mystery, it was the same soul self beings that had aspects and facets within this. It is within the universe, within the larger universe. There are, so it's not like they're all heaven out there. That's why the earth was also
Mhm.
created, because to resolve what was the issue before the earth existed. And the
Yeah.
issue is that all the different soul beings have different ideas of things, and some are much more controlling. And you can also see by, let's say, different nations where some nations are going into much more control. It is because those soul it's not because humans have actually done something wrong, but it is because it's the nature of those soul beings. So we're all kind of, even as a soul being, learning how to live within the reality where there are so many different aspects.
Mhm.
I mean, so many different ways of perceiving and living and experiencing. Because once there was one, and it exploded itself into many, and we are the many, and all the many, it exploded itself into many because it wanted to experience so many different unique things. And that's why each of us are unique, and we're all learning how to find ways of living in peace with each other. And so it is extremely exciting. So being in the now moment, you can experience that peace, and you can experience how you can be all these different, what you used to look like oppositions, now are quite beautifully work together, even though they still perhaps are having opposite opinions. But you can find there is just peace throughout the whole, and the expansion and the love and the respect. And so it's such a different way to be and to experience yourself and the world. And also another thing is, the more I grant myself freedom, the more I'm then able then to also give other people freedom. And that is such
Mm.
an incredible freeing thing that helps in today's world. Because had I not done that, had I tried to control all these people, had I tried to tell other people, no, you're not allowed to be this way, you have to think like I do,
Mhm.
then I would still be in that game. But to actually get out of the game, you have to let people just be who they are. Because, for example, at the moment, there's this big battle between left and right, like
Mhm.
and it's like you have to become whole, step out of
Neither one
that,
side nor the
either
other.
one side, and also not allow that game to pull you in. Because for
Mhm.
me now, when someone says, oh, are you a lefty or a righty, I'm thinking, I'm Alex, that's it, I'm not a
Yeah.
lefty or
Yeah,
righty.
exactly.
It's meaningless to me. And perhaps but have some beliefs that are the left, some beliefs that are the right, but it doesn't mean that they own. It's like these energies of this battle, they try to own you. As soon as, like, you say
Mhm.
something, oh, I believe in this, that means, oh, you belong to us. Suck. So now
Yeah.
you're a lefty or now you're a righty, and now you have to perform and fight for us, and you have to believe everything else like what we believe, and we choose one person to represent us, and you have to then continually be involved with what they're doing or not doing. So that's a huge game that you completely get stuck into if you allow yourself to it. But when you realize nobody owns me, not the lefties, not the righties, I'm a holy, as in whole,
Yeah.
whole, I'm
Yeah.
a whole, I'm not a halfling, and I don't belong to them. They can have a battle, but that short wall behind, step outside of it. And yet a lot of people got very caught. And last week especially, there's been even people that thought they were out. I saw they get pulled right in, the women's issues, the abortion issue, that issue. It can suck you right in, and this is the time.
And this seems like passion, but it
Yes, it
isn't.
isn't
Those
passion.
are the passions that are not
They're
passion.
not passions. They're meaningless when you have this bigger view, because when you're whole, these things become meaningless. And you can also see the good in both, and you can just let them be. And because it doesn't really, none of these things really affect us anymore. Like, especially, like it's the new generations, it's their job to create the world that they want to live in. And that's their right. Also, not only their job, but it's their right to decide, are they going to have abortion? Are they not going to have abortion? Like, once I'm past the childbearing age, it's not anymore my not my job, but it's not my problem. If people who are the next generation decide on different than I did, it's their right to experience what they want to experience. So you take freedom for yourself, but you also need to give it to others, and that is extremely freeing, to give freedom back to others to be who they want to be. And yet, if they want your assistance, absolutely, you are there to help, but otherwise you just leave them be.
This is very, this I suppose what you've actually answered. There's a question here,
Oh yeah.
and it says, it seems that certain people that I find to be pleasant have the tendency to attract others who are unpleasant to interact with. So essentially, I have to stop interacting with even the pleasant person in order to avoid the unpleasant ones. What is really going on in this dynamics? And I believe that in a way you've answered this question by what's going on is really there are aspects that are showing up in your own duality, whoever wrote the question, in your own inner duality. So there are parts of you that you are accepting and parts of you that you are not. So first, before discarding those people altogether, those people that you find pleasant, first I would say go inside and realize where the separation is happening, because there is a kind of the part that says this and the part that says that, and they are not in agreement within, and that creates outside that kind of, this is a pleasant person and this is not, but if this pleasant person is going to be with this unpleasant person, I don't want to be with either one of them. So the other way around would be go inside and be with both sides and integrate that, and then you will be able to give freedom, just like Alexis was sharing. Then you will be able to give freedom to the person you consider to be the pleasant person, to choose whichever companies they want, including you. So this means that you are an unpleasant person or a pleasant person, because this person that you find pleasant is choosing unpleasant people to be with. So where do you stand? What? So there's judgment involved here with yourself as well. So the invitation is, if you could stand behind the short wall within yourself, come into a space of compassion within yourself, breathing deeply, coming into that non-judgmental kind of awareness, where you can see what's going on inside in the dynamics of you, and then you can perceive that situation in a completely different way, and then you can make probably a more compassionate, conscious choice for you. And you can still choose not to be with either of those people. That's not the point here. It's the point is, you can be doing it out of, okay, I will just move to another kind of company, but not because there is a kind of a rejection or anything like that. So I would say compassion is the pill, the recipe, the cure, the transformation, the everything and everything. And compassion comes into the, in Portuguese, com means with. So when you bring in the compassion, then you fall into passion. You fall into this Christed consciousness. Really, it's all one and the same thing, and it has no
Yeah.
predefined concepts about people, things, etc. You allow yourself to discover as you go. Like for instance, this person that you find pleasant might possibly is a person that other people find unpleasant, and the person that you find unpleasant is possibly a person that other people, including your friend, find pleasant. So there this duality creates a bit of a distraction that can be transmuted within. And yeah,
And
that's
it's
it.
also an opportunity, because if something is triggering you in another
Yeah,
person, that
exactly.
means there is something within you that has a hook upon which
Right.
this trigger hooks. And as long as that is unresolved within you, you will keep being triggered, because there is a big difference when you're unintegrated as something and you're not accepting something about yourself that then you project onto another and you find unpleasant. That's that shadow that we talked about before, where you don't see that part in yourself. When you accept it in compassion, then you actually dissolve that hook. And then you see that the other person actually really was like that, what you perceive them to be, because there is a reason why they hooked you, but it's neutral within you. They have no hook, so it doesn't affect you anymore. You still might
Yeah,
find them unpleasant, and you still might then choose not to be with them,
exactly.
because it's just not anything that resonates with you
It's not
anymore.
productive.
Yeah, and that's very, very different to act, because you become very discerning. It's not that you are then with everyone. You can't actually, then there's a next stage, which I'm discovering now, where I can be with anyone and everyone, because now it's just exciting. It's nothing anymore. And it doesn't really bother me, nothing, nothing bothers me. It's just like, wow, this is a research, exciting adventure. So that's a different thing again, because you never stop expanding. But initially, it's like you have a hook, you project something on another. When you just find that hook, what's within you that is like that, you dissolve it, then the person doesn't hook you anymore. You can be with them, or maybe you let them go, or maybe
Yeah.
they will probably also let you go, because they don't have a hook within you. You're not interested, you become uninteresting to them if they can't hook within you. And then you just keep expanding and seeing where all these things go. But yeah, you just like Tanya so beautifully shared, you just are with these things. You allow your soul presence, you allow your compassion, whatever you call that. And then from there, you dissolve, you integrate, you resolve, because all of the things that you need for this are within you already. But you need to be present, you need to stop, you need to breathe, because you need to learn how to use your inner abilities. You need to learn, not how to even learn how to use them, you need to be able to start perceiving that you actually have them in the first place. And if you don't give yourself that time, then you never will discover them. Yeah.
So I believe we're
We're done.
already. It's like it's very rich and yummy share here, and there's a lot to dive into. And and you are a part of it, so thank you, every single person that is with us today and afterwards, because within the timelessness of who we are, there is none of that. So thank you very, very much for bringing this juiciness, this yumminess, into this interaction, into this flow that we enjoy so much. Thank you, Alexis, as well, for the passionate, bubbly joy of sharing of wisdom. And this it's like we blend, and at a certain point then there's you and me, but then there isn't, and then there is. Same thing with everything else.
It's a beautiful dance. And thank you, dear Tanya, for, for dancing in this way. And thank you each one that has participated. And until next time, we will both upload the video also to our
Yeah,
YouTube channel. So check out our website. And
that's it.
also thank you for each and every one who contributed, who donated. You
Oh,
know who
yes,
you
thank
are.
you.
And
Thank you.
we appreciate it and we accept with gratitude. And until next time.
Yeah, it's like receiving bouquets of flowers. Thank you very, very much.